Hello, my name is Sebastian Ortiz. My current hobby is learning a new language. This presentation will be on what methods you could take to learn a new language, the benefits of learning a new language, and I'd also like to say that I'm learning this language because I've been doing this in Spain, and now I'm back in the States self-quarantining, and since I don't have much else to do, I figured I'd do this from time to time, and it just became a hobby, learning a new language. Why learn a new language? Learning a new language allows you to communicate with more people. That means if, say, you were to learn Spanish, you'd be able to speak with Spanish speaking people. You could go to Spain and speak with people there. You could go to Latin America and speak with them. You could have conversations, tell stories. You can make transactions between each other. This just means that being able to learn a new language allows you to break that language barrier that exists between you and people who speak a completely different language than the one you're used to. A new language helps in getting jobs and becoming a better communicator in your career. Having a new language under your belt is always a marketable skill to have when applying for jobs, uh, putting it on resumes, and in interviews. It's always something to just bring out onto the table and to show because it's something that would make you better than your competitors applying for that same job. It's a skill that I think in any field, whether it be business, uh, whether it be absolutely anything in the film industry and anything at all, learning a new language can help you communicate with so many other people, and that's essentially what a lot of jobs require: communication and chemistry between you and your coworkers. Traveling to new countries can become an easier and more enjoyable experience. Traveling to a new country is by far one of the best activities a human can partake in. It's very fun and it's very engaging. But knowing the language of that particular country makes it even easier for someone to communicate with the locals, try to find activities for yourself. One could argue that not being able to speak the language could be an adventure on its own. But with having the ability of speaking that language under your belt, you could always find yourself in almost anywhere you want to be because you know that you can speak the language and you'd find yourself activities and things to do with the ease of advice from locals. How communicating with others help. Being able to speak more languages allows you to feel at ease anywhere you are in the country because you could always ask the local for help. Say you're stuck in just some farmland in, say, France, southern France maybe, but you don't know your way around the area. You could always ask a local, maybe the directions for a bus to take you back to the city, or maybe for a taxi, or just anything at all. Being able to speak that language helps you a lot more than somebody who won't be able because they'd probably just have to use hand expressions or have to mimic some sort of vocabulary just to try to get their point across. Whereas you can simply just say what you know because you know the language. Your social skills could improve significantly. How could your social skills improve? By being able to speak a new language, you are also able to communicate with millions and millions of more people that also happen to speak that language. Your social skills could also improve because you're more inclined to speak with people who speak that new language that you learn. And that gives you some sort of charisma and drive to socialize with more people. Make friends much easier by conversing effectively. If you can speak the same language that the person who you're speaking to does, that allows you to share interests, share conversations, share stories, where if somebody who doesn't speak his or her language would have a hard time trying to get their point across. And in turn, they won't be able to make a friendship because they just won't be able to communicate their thoughts, their interests to the other person. How languages help in career making. In almost any career or occupation, being multilingual is a great addition. This can mean for business, for film, for finance, for any government job, for whatever it may be. There's no reason why somebody who's competing with you won't do a worse job than you do if you were multilingual. That means you have so much more capabilities in communicating with so many more people, and it's just a skill that is not easy to achieve, and only those that have that stand out amongst the rest. Displaying the ability to speak more languages on a resume increases the likelihood of getting the particular job. If you're to put that on a resume and you're competing with somebody else who has almost an identical resume but doesn't have that multilingual status that you do, that is a factor that most employers will take into consideration because that will allow you to help with clients, coworkers, and it's something that stands out when trying to look for a new employee. Depending on your occupation, having more languages under your belt will allow better connecting with customers, clients, and coworkers. Being able to speak effectively with other people, because you're never going to have a job where you're always working by yourself. Having a language that potentially they speak and only speak other than your primary language is such a benefit for you as an employee, or even for you if you were an employer looking for people who need a job. It's always best to find somebody who can speak more than one language because you know you always get your job done quicker and easier. Speaking a new language and the brain. Learning a new language improves memory, multitasking, concentration abilities, and so much more. Being able to speak a new language allows so much more to go on inside the brain. You increase brain functionality, and in turn, your memory could drastically increase. Your multitasking could focus on so many more things at once, and concentrating at whatever it is at school, your job becomes so much easier because you've already dealt with such a vast level of mental exercise that mostly anything else is not so much more challenging to you. It exercises the brain, which allows for anything that requires thought to be improved significantly. Just like mentioned in the last bullet point, being able to speak another language could drastically increase the functionality of your brain. When you're dealing with numbers, when you're dealing with memory, all these things are improved because you've already dealt with a big task, and that's learning a new language. Want to learn one after another? It becomes easier to learn languages after having learned a non-native one. If you learn Spanish, it becomes easier for you to probably learn Italian or French. You've already known the techniques and the ways that you taught yourself how to speak that language. That becomes applicable to any language you want to learn. Surely, for some languages, it will probably be more difficult, say for Mandarin, where the language and the alphabet are way more foreign than, say, Italian for Spanish speakers. But you'll still have some sort of techniques that you could still put into the learning of Mandarin and maybe other foreign languages that you learn while you learn Spanish. How can you learn a language? The best way to learn a language is to speak it with others in a country that speaks the language. If you want to learn Spanish, Spain is probably one of the best places you could go, maybe anywhere in Latin America, and it allows you to just learn the language easier because you're automatically surrounded by everything Spanish, from books, from signs, stores, restaurants, people conversating on the street will most likely speak that language, so you have no choice but to teach yourself for the sake of living there. Another method to learn a new language is to surround yourself with things in that language like TV, music, books, etc. If you're not in the country where your language of choice is being spoken in, then your best bet is to choose TV, music, books that are spoken in that language or presented in that language. It might be a sacrifice because you much better prefer and do stuff that are in your own native language, but it's some sort of a sacrifice for you to learn a new language because that's essentially what it is. It's a task and it's difficult to do, but it's all the worthwhile. Textbooks, and videos pertaining to the language would be good to review when starting to learn the language. This method I used because I was in Spain, but I wasn't learning Spanish. I was learning Italian, so I didn't surround myself with all that. I did surround my things with TV, music, and books, but most of my time was dedicated with textbooks and just videos that spoke about grammar and spelling in Italian. So if you don't know where else to start, going to these cheap alternatives is a good method to use. Should you try to learn a new language? Learning a new language isn't easy to do and will take a lot of your time. That being said, there are a whole bunch of benefits that learning a new language can introduce. When I started learning Italian, I didn't know if I could get as far as I did. I'm around the basic level now of Italian, but it did take a long time. It did take hours of my days, and I'm not even at the end destination. I could probably communicate somewhat with cashiers and maybe a few people on the street in Italy, but the most basic terminology. And it's taken a lot of my time from my days, so I figured that this wouldn't be easy for anybody who can't even speak a second language, as I do. But if you put your all in, if you put in work and effort, this could pay off tremendously. And I think everybody should try it if they have the time, the patience, and mostly the energy to really pursue this goal of theirs. Although I don't have an audience in front of me at the moment to ask any questions, I'd like to thank anybody watching this, most notably Ray, for asking of me to create a presentation of a hobby of mine, which is learning a new language. I hope you've enjoyed it. I hope you learned something, a thing or two about it, and stay safe. I hope you're doing well in the coronavirus epidemic. And thank you. Thank you very much.